Thom Hartmann here at Netroots Nation on Free Speech TV, and we're talking with Abraham Bonowitz. He is the co-director and co-founder of Death Penalty Action. The website, of course, deathpenaltyaction.org, I guess that's an email address. Anyhow, Abraham, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Great having you with us. So let's start at the beginning. Death Penalty Action, what is the organization? Where did it come from? What are you up to?
Well, I've been doing anti-death penalty work since I changed my mind on the issue in the early 1990s. But it was after Donald Trump was inaugurated, or when he was being inaugurated, that we realized that we needed a new organization in the movement to be ready to deal with if and when we start having federal executions again, which we did not under the Obama administration. George W. Bush had 3 executions, and those were the first under the current law, 2 of whom, by the way, were veterans. But in any case, we realized there needed to be somebody about the action, the in the street stuff, and also lifting up grassroots activists across the country who are doing this work state by state. And that's what we do, is we lift up visibility. We also do a lot of behind the scenes organizing that you'll never know about, but it's part of what turns the key in some of these victories that we've had, repealing the death penalty or restricting it or stopping executions.
So you mentioned the federal death penalty. Are you also working in the states on state death penalties?
Our main focus is in the states.
Oh, okay.
We wanted to create something so that we're ready when federal executions might resume. Who knows what's going to happen, but most of our work at this point is really, we're ready for that, but most of what we do in the meantime is working on state campaigns and specific executions where there's a teachable moment. For example, we just had the 1,500th execution since 1977, so it's a round number, and the media likes to glom onto things like that, so we made sure that our movement was ready to take advantage of that and put attention on it. And interestingly, just as a side note, the guy who ended up the victim was a young black man in Georgia, which is the rarest of people for whom they seek a death sentence. But he happened to be a corrections officer. He was off duty, but he was a murdered corrections officer, and that's why the people were executed for his murder in Georgia. Normally you have to be a white woman is the highest victim.
As a victim,
for
so you mentioned that one of the things that got you started in helping put this organization together, you're the co-founder, we're talking with Abraham Bonowitz, who's the co-founder of Death Penalty Action, was, well, actually you didn't say specifically what it was. You said you changed your mind about the death penalty in the 90s. What was it that changed your mind, and how does that inform your worldview on this? And is that a part of the larger argument that's being made against the death penalty?
Yeah, and actually that's why you can see more conservatives and Republicans co-sponsoring legislation to restrict or repeal the death penalty. It's because people evolve on the issue. For me, the first time I was confronted with the issue as an adult, it was in an academic setting. There was somebody was talking about the death penalty, and I argued and said, this is the United States. We have the best justice system in the world. And if that includes the death penalty, fine with me, I'll push the button myself. And then I set out to try to prove those people wrong. And I found out that everything I thought about the death penalty, the truth was the opposite. I thought that it was fair. I thought that it cost less. I thought that we got everybody that was guilty. I thought that, and especially I thought that far too few people were being executed. And the thing that changed my mind was learning that you have to kill in a county that can afford a death penalty trial. Kill in a rural county that doesn't have enough budget for a capital trial, you can't get the death penalty. And that's why there's now 29 states that still have a death penalty in their books. Only a handful are actually using it. But the real measure is look at a county map. Look at the death penalty by county. We got about 3,500 counties in the whole country. A handful, fewer than 2% of all the people that are executed come from 2% of our counties. And that is unfair. I mean, if you kill, you should be killed, is the idea, right? An eye for an eye. And we could talk about the Bible and all that other stuff. But for me, carved into the face of the United States Supreme Court building are the words equal justice under law. And anybody that's ever been involved in the criminal justice system knows that's not true. It's all about who has money and the right lawyer. That's how you get your justice, or not, right? Well, especially with the death penalty, that is a glaring example of how we do not have equal justice under law. And there's so many ways I could go on that. But really, people should look at our webpage, but we don't really do the facts. That's the Death Penalty Information Center, deathpenaltyinfo.org. They just rolled out a brand new website, and you can go on these searchable maps and look at every county, and it's just an amazing place to get the facts.
Mike Farrell, a friend of mine, he's an actor.
Oh, good. Tom, you met Abe.
Yeah, he's been working on this forever and just doing some great stuff. Is there a coalition of people around the country? You just mentioned another website that is unrelated to you, and it's really interesting interviewing activists. Very often they're like, I only want to talk about my group. Building silos, and it sounds like you're trying to build a coalition.
If we all do better, then we all do better. And we're all in this together. The legal people, the research people, the policy people, the activist people, we all have to work together, and we all have our own niche that we work on, but we also, if we recognize that we're in it together, then we can be collaborative. And that's how we're winning. Our organization, or our movement, has abolished the death penalty in New Jersey, New Mexico, Illinois, Connecticut, Maryland. We passed a bill in Nebraska. There are only 8 Democrats in the Nebraska body. They only have they have a Senate, no House. They passed the bill, it was vetoed. They overrode the veto, and the governor put his own money into a campaign to overturn that via referendum. Okay,
he was so eager to kill somebody.
Yeah, so they brought the death. That's the Ricketts. So Ricketts. I had a hard time cheering for the Cubs.
Ricketts is the billionaire real estate family, aren't they?
Yeah, they own the Cubs. I had a hard time cheering for the Cubs when they were in the World Series because it was owned by the Ricketts family. Anyway, so New Jersey, New Mexico, Illinois, Connecticut, Maryland, Nebraska, and just in May this year, New Hampshire have legislatively repealed the death penalty. Like I said, in Nebraska that's been reversed, but otherwise it's held. We just had the 10-year anniversary of the repeal bill taking effect in New Mexico. That was at the end of June. And just before that, the New Mexico Supreme Court took off the 2 remaining people on that death row. So New Mexico, totally death penalty free. But then also, we help set the stage for the courts. So in Washington State, in New York State, and in Delaware State, the Supreme Courts have thrown out the death penalty statutes in those states. So we now have 29 states that still have it on their books, but we've carved it away. There are 12 states that never had it under the current law. In 1972, all the laws were thrown out, and any state that wanted to have a death penalty had to write new laws. They were upheld in 76, and we started executing people again in 77.
You said that you went from being a death penalty advocate to being a death penalty opponent because you did some research. It seems that, the average person isn't going to do research.
Well, let me share with you. Well, finish your question.
Well, yeah. The argument that the conservatives make and that you find on Fox News and that kind of thing is, hey, it's a lot cheaper to just kill somebody than to keep them in prison for 30 years, number one. Number two, they did heinous crimes. They need to be removed from society. Number three, the Bible says an eye for an eye. You mentioned that. This is not revenge. This is justice and all that kind of stuff. And yet, I think there's only 7 or 8 countries in the world that have the death penalty.
Oh, there's more than that, but
we're in the company of countries like Iran and
we're
Saudi
in
Arabia,
partnership with Iran, Saudi Arabia,
North Korea.
Yeah. North Korea is interesting. If it's true what we hear about their methods of execution, there was one guy who was executed with an anti-aircraft gun. There was another guy who they say had a pack of rabidly hungry dogs set on him. How awful would that be?
This is Donald Trump's best friend, yeah. But where I was going with that is the general meme contradicts everything that you said, and you can't, and it seems to me that we can't just simply say to people, no, it's not cheaper, to put somebody to death than it is to keep them in jail for 20 years. No, it's not, justice. how do you summarize that argument?
Well, here's the thing. The one you left out is politicians often say we need this for the victim families. And
For closure.
For closure, right? Except there's no such thing as closure when it's your loved one, because there's always going to be that empty chair at the table. The question is, are we going to ask you to wait 10, 20, actually more than 20, 30, even up to 40 years for us to kill that guy so that you can feel your closure? Meanwhile, every time it comes up in the courts again, it's like ripping open that scab. What we have, and by the way, fewer than 2% of all the people who commit murder who are caught, who are death eligible, so fewer than 2% of the death eligible cases end up with a death sentence and stay on death row to the point of execution. So if you really believe in what victim families need or in a justice system, we need a different ultimate punishment, which generally is death in prison, or more commonly known as life without parole. But I like death in prison because it speaks to conservatives who want the death, right? And not just conservatives, but anybody that really, you get that gut reaction anytime you hear.
So basically what you're saying is that the moment that somebody is basically sentenced to death in prison, that typically a family would say, okay, we feel closure now. We know that this guy's never going to be out. He's going to be basically tortured for the rest of his life.
If it's a death sentence, then no, you haven't gotten justice.
No,
but if it's a life sentence,
is that the life sentence actually provides that, quote, closure better than a death sentence does, because it's so frequently interrupted.
There are some places where people can keep bringing it up, but even that doesn't happen very much. But at the end of the day, every one of those arguments could be a whole 1-hour program, right? And anybody can research on our page.
Well, my point is that those arguments need to be put into a concise.
Yeah, well, the important thing is to find out where somebody's coming from and then address that. So I don't want to talk about the money thing with somebody who cares about the Bible or what Jesus said. And I don't want to talk about Jesus to somebody who, or what Jewish law says. I'm Jewish, but I can go either way.
Well, we're not living in the Bronze Age, which is when the Bible was written. I mean, that's...
Sure. What I'm saying is, whatever is important to you about the issue, I'm going to find that out, and then I'm going to plant seeds of doubt with you. And that's why we have more and more conservatives and Republicans actually co-sponsoring legislation. All of these repeal bills I mentioned, they had bipartisan support. Some just 1 or 2 people, but some many more. Like I said, in Nebraska, there were only 8 Democrats in the entire body, I think. There's some small number like that. And, so Republicans are looking at this as a criminal justice reform issue, as something that they can say.
It's a fiscal issue, too.
Well, that especially.
It's a lot cheaper, so.
Yeah.
Just in summary, we're talking with Abraham Bonowitz, who is the co-founder of Death Penalty Action. Just in summary, what would you say? What would you suggest to people who may be watching right now, who want to get involved, who might want to get involved with your organization or any other? Where does a person start?
The most important thing is making sure you have accurate information and then sharing that. Share it on your social media, talk to your friends. Most importantly, write to your own state and federal representatives, both state and federal. And if you're in a state that doesn't have a death penalty, tell them, let's keep it that way and let's do better for murder victim family members. And if it's a state that does have it, also find your state organization and get involved there, or I can help you. Just find us on deathpenaltyaction.org. And then here's the beautiful thing. What I've learned doing this organizing work is we don't have to change anybody's mind. We just have to find the people who agree with us and get them to do something.
Good plan. Abraham, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
It's great.
Appreciate you having me.